Welcome to the debate. Imagine walking into a life insurance office, flexing your muscles, claiming you're in absolute peak physical health, and then walking right across the street to the ER to demand life support.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild image.
It is, but that is exactly what South Africa's state power utility, Eskom, is doing right now with their finances.
It really is this massive contradiction. I mean, we're looking at the ConsciousNet wedge strategy brief on their 2025 disclosures, and the whiplash is just real.
Totally.
Eskom just reported a 16 billion rand profit, right? They doubled their EBITDA. But at the exact same time, they filed an application with the regulator, NERSA, basically claiming they are financially unviable.
Yeah, demanding a 36.2% tariff increase just to survive. So we have this patient claiming to be thriving and dying at the exact same time.
Right.
I'll be arguing that this, profitability illusion points to a deeply broken government structure. Eskom is completely paralyzed by conflicting mandates.
And I come at it from a slightly different way. The financial reality here is mathematically consistent. It's just being disastrously communicated.
Oh, you think it's just communication?
I do. It's a correctable disclosure error that's artificially creating this massive credibility gap with investors.
Well, let's look at the mechanics of why I think this is a structural failure. Eskom acts like a competitive enterprise in its PR, but legally, they are literally litigating against NERSA.
Sure, but
And they're actively framing private energy traders as threats to their survival. You cannot structurally be a state-supported monopoly that crushes competition while, pretending to be a modern competitive utility.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. The contradiction you're seeing isn't because the organization is fundamentally broken, it's because of how they report the numbers.
How so?
Look at that 16 billion rand profit. It's an accounting illusion. They received a massive 64 billion rand in government debt relief.
Right.
If you drop that bailout onto the balance sheet, suddenly on paper, you look 16 billion in the green.
Exactly, which proves my point. The operation itself is still bleeding cash.
Well, true. The core costs haven't changed, but they are legally required to produce these siloed documents for different audiences.
Yeah.
They hand a glossy sustainability report to the public highlighting the bailout, and then they hand this desperate financial application to the regulator. Both are technically true, but because they aren't reconciled into one narrative, investors don't know which one to trust.
See, I'm not convinced by that, because you're treating a structural failure like a formatting error.
It's not just the formatting error.
But it is. You can't fix the patient by just giving the insurance company and the doctor the exact same chart. The patient is still failing.
Yeah, but the chart really matters when you're trying to raise capital to fix the patient.
Fair, but let's look at the reality on the ground. The ConsciousNet brief notes that coal procurement is Eskom's primary cost driver, right?
Right.
They ask for a 36% tariff hike to cover this, and NERSA only approved a fraction of that, like around 12.7%. When your core operational costs are fundamentally misaligned with what the regulator allows you to charge, you are permanently reliant on state bailouts.
That's a compelling argument, but
It mathematically proves the governance model is unviable.
But have you considered what private capital actually cares about? Investors don't flee from poor financials, they flee from uncertainty.
I mean, they don't love poor financials either.
Sure, but if Eskom produced a single integrated disclosure, what the brief calls a credibility architecture, they could map out exactly how they plan to use those massive regulatory settlements. We're talking about the 54 billion and 40 billion rand NERSA settlements.
Right. Those are the historical clawbacks NERSA owes them.
Exactly. If Eskom clearly showed investors, here is our debt relief, here's the nearly $94 billion total coming our way, and here's exactly how it covers our coal costs, investors could accurately price the risk.
Okay, that transparency unlocks transition financing. I get it. But I would frame it differently. You cannot simply communicate your way out of a legal strategy that fundamentally opposes your public reform narrative.
Well, you're suggesting that an integrated report will suddenly make international investors ignore the fact that Eskom is suing its own regulator to block private traders.
Actually, the act of transparent disclosure forces that structural alignment.
Wait, really?
Yes, if leadership is forced to publish a single reconciled document, they can no longer hide the contradictions. They can't tell the public they welcome private traders while disclosing a legal budget dedicated to crushing them. The strategy works precisely because sunlight is the best disinfectant. It forces them to pick a lane, and that unlocks the capital.
I see why you think that, but shining a brighter light on a broken foundation doesn't fix the foundation. It just shows everyone the cracks. It's a deep-seated structural governance crisis driving these incompatible actions. And I maintain it's a correctable crisis of integrated financial communication. If they fix the reporting, they fix the strategy.
We'll have to agree to disagree there.
We will, but we certainly converge on one absolute truth here. Without an immediate resolution to this credibility gap, Eskom simply cannot unlock the bridge financing it desperately needs to survive this transition.
Completely agreed. And, there's so much more to unpack in the source material regarding how this financing bottleneck directly impacts the spatial transition in Mpumalanga.
Oh, absolutely. Figuring out how to use the existing grid capacity to protect jobs in that coal-heavy region is the next massive hurdle. The stakes go way beyond
it's a pretty wild image.
It is, but that is exactly what South Africa's state power utility, ESCOM, is doing right now with their finances.
It really is this massive contradiction. I mean, we're looking at the ConsciousNet wedge strategy brief on their 2025